glitch here, but I think we're on now. You guys hear me? Picture good? Everything good? All right. Had some issue with the sound. All right. Yeah. Welcome. It's Sunday, July 20th, and I thought we'd talk today about socialism. It really does seem to be everywhere. We've talked a little bit about Mamdani winning the Democratic nomination in New York City. I just read today that another socialist was elected to be the Democratic candidate for mayor in Minneapolis, in Minnesota. So we've got two major U.S. cities with explicitly socialist mayoral candidates. At least Mamdani seems to be ahead in the polls, so he seems to be favored by many. But it's more than that. This goes beyond New York or Minneapolis. In one survey, 62% of American young people had a positive opinion of socialism. 34% had a positive view of communism. Only 46% had a positive impression of big business, lower than in previous polls, I guess, previous generations, previous years. So young people are clearly, dramatically, significantly tilting towards socialism. And this goes beyond kind of woke. This is a lot more explicitly, economic socialism. Remember, Mamdani wants to run government-run or city-run grocery stores. He wants to have the buses and the subways run for free. He wants to. He wants the means of production. I mean, he's a much more classic socialist. Now, he also, on top of that, he's got defund the police and bringing in social workers and all of that. But that's kind of that's in addition to. So it goes beyond just the woke and the anti-colonialism and the pro-Hamas and all of that. But it also has this economic dimension that socialists have always had. So it's definitely a phenomena out there, and it's a phenomena that keeps rearing its very, very, very ugly head. Socialism is a very, 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 very ugly idea. And it's a real question of why. Why does it keep coming back? Why do we keep getting, socialism? Why is it so attractive for young people? And I think the question to this is particularly interesting given the struggle that most intellectuals out there are having in trying to explain it. I mean, the reality is that, what do you do about it? It's every generation has to face the same issue. Every generation has to relearn. It's as if everybody knows socialism doesn't work, but it keeps coming back and it keeps coming back and it keeps coming back. I watched a video of what's his name? The Ukrainian named guy Kissin and in the UK, right? Incredibly articulate, really, really smart, good guy. He gets it. And basically his explanation was, socialism keeps coming back because, young people are fed up of paying high cost of housing, and they've all got tuition, they've all got student loans and debt. Maybe, right? Konstantin Kissin, thank you. So that's why they become socialist, as if the solution to high student debt and high cost of housing is going to be rent control. I mean, again, Econ 101 suggests the opposite. Or privatizing grocery stores is somehow, not privatizing, having the government run grocery stores somehow is a solution to high cost of living, or if there is a high cost of living. Note that the socialists, as they always have been, in all of history, I think, the socialists are the educated. The socialists are the more intellectual. They're the ones that have gone to school. They're the ones who've studied ideas. They don't have an excuse of ignorance, certainly not an excuse of stupidity. And yet they keep spouting ignorant and stupid ideas. So what is it? And I think what's also interesting here is, why don't our intellectuals get what's going on? Now, this came to mind in particular because Tyler Cowen, who's a libertarian, small L libertarian economist at George Mason University, has written an essay in the Free Press, wrote it earlier this month, "Why Won't Socialists Die?" And he kind of a little bit reviews the literature. He says, a lot of intellectuals have faced this question for generations now. They've been asking, why won't they die? They fail, and they fail, and they fail, and they fail, and they fall flat on their face over and over and over and over again. And yet a new generation keeps getting born and keeps having to experience the falling flat on their face anew, right? They have to start over. And of course, socialists have, every generation of socialists have a complicated, detailed list of excuses for why they failed. Like, Cuba's not doing well because of American sanctions. I read this today. Cuba's not doing well because of American sanctions. It's all America's fault. And yet, in spite of the fact that Cuba's very poor, Cubans are super happy. Like, they're the happiest people ever. They're much happier than Americans. It probably explains why so many Americans are willing to get into rafts and try and row to Cuba in shark-infested waters just to get away from America and to go to the happiness capital of the world, Cuba. Socialists have to be pretty desperate to pine for the happiness of the Cuban people who would leave Cuba like that if they had an opportunity to do so. So they always come up with excuses, but again, the excuses are pretty thin. Pretty thin. Right? It wasn't real socialism. Over and over and over and over again. And every commune fails, and every kibbutz fails, and every socialist experiment fails, and every, gang of friends who start their little utopia in the middle of nowhere fails. And there's always an excuse. They didn't do it quite right. It wasn't quite by the book. So why? And then why can't our intellectuals, smart guys, figure it out? So let's start with Friedrich Hayek. According to Tyler Cowen, I'm reading for Tyler Cowen. Economics Nobel laureate Friedrich Hayek attributed, socialism to mankind's atavistic instincts left over from earlier, poorer societies when extreme sharing was necessary. Now, it's not clear at all that extreme sharing was necessary ever in human societies. It's not clear why this idea of extreme sharing should be passed on as we become richer. It's not clear why extreme sharing should be passed on, particularly into societies where some are producing so much more than others. It's not clear why extreme sharing should be passed on when we know so much more about the world. It's not passed on in our genes. It's not in our DNA. So why haven't the, as Hayek would call them, cultural institutions adapted to the new world, where sharing is not positive, it's actually detrimental? Hayek knows socialism doesn't work, it's detrimental. Sharing on a social scale is detrimental. So anyway, the instinct to resent people, the instinct to resent people who have more, the instinct to demand sharing, I guess, is an instinct, and that is the explanation. Again, Tyler, Milton Friedman treated the socialists as though they were well-intentioned individuals who simply had not learned enough good economics. And yeah, I think Milton Friedman did treat them that way, but again, is that justified? Milton Friedman certainly did a pretty good job explaining the economics to them. I mean, in plain economic terms, and often did it in very plain terms. And even in terms, and this is a weakness of his, but even in terms of their own, kind of what system helps the poor the most, what system is most beneficial for the weakest. So even in terms that the socialists should respect in terms of the goals of the socialist, and yet he didn't manage to teach them economics. So why is it that it's so hard to teach socialist economics? And why, there are not many socialist economists. There are many statist economists, but not many socialist economists. And yet our economists can't teach our students that socialism doesn't work. Why? Tyler continues, Joseph Schumpeter believed it was the curse of capitalism that its intellectuals would always turn against it. An idea that was also seconded by Peter Nozick. And again, there's the intellectuals resent the fact that they're really, really smart, and they're at the universities, and they're doing this important, life-changing, crucial work, and yet they're not getting rich, and these entrepreneurs and businessmen are getting rich. So they hate the rich, they hate capitalism, the system that puts them in academia and makes them, in a sense, poor, and they resent the fact that the capitalists are so successful. Maybe, I mean, these weird psychological, all intellectuals are like this kind of attitude. Why do the intellectuals think that? Why aren't some of the intellectuals, at least, or a significant number of them, smart enough to figure it out? Among others, that the only reason they have even the job of intellectuals is because the capitalist is creating money enough to be able to fund the universities that they're in. But you go on and on. Why is it the intellectuals are so attracted to socialism? Is it just resentment? See, it's all presented as genetic and psychological, or ignorance. Ignorance, economics, and resentment, and it's all psychology. It's very unsatisfying. Peter Teal, Tyler Cowen continues, Peter Teal, more recently, has blamed student debt and high cost of buying a home. Yeah, that's the same as kissing, right? Quote, when one has too much student debt, or if housing is too unaffordable, then one will have negative capital for a long time. And if one has no stake in the capitalist system, then one may well turn against it. Really? I mean, every student always has had negative capital. Poor people, young people are typically poor, and they almost always have negative capital. People who came to America in the 19th century had negative capital. How does this explain them being socialist? Wouldn't you expect them then to be capitalists and embrace the system that allows them to get out of this situation of negative capital and move towards positive capital? And in particular, the educated who are smart and know that they're capable of earning and that they can have positive capital. They just have to, if they work hard and within a capitalist system, if they invest well, they will make money. So it's resentment and ignorance and, and genes and emotions. Now, Tyler says, quote, there's truth to all these hypotheses, and there are others yet. But focusing on 2025, I have more concrete and perhaps more depressing explanation. Socialism is surging right now because American society has simply turned negative. We complain more, we whine more, and we are more likely to dislike each other. And if we are more negative, that means we are more negative about everything around us, including capitalism, as if capitalism is around us. Big business has never been bigger, and we have never spent more time with it, whether it's scrolling on our smartphones, calling up an Uber, or flying to another city. So we're just negative. Again, a completely and utterly emotional explanation. We hate everything around us. We're just negative about everything. And the consequence of that is to say, chuck it all. We want socialism of all things, which, if we just look around the world a little bit, we just open our eyes a little bit, if we just read a history book or two, we discover very, very quickly that that socialism will actually make things a lot worse for us. We can pretend Cubans are happy, but that's a pretense. That is mythology. That is self-delusion on a grand scale. He writes, consider the kinds of socialist doctrines we see in the public sphere today. The core message is negative, and more of the hostility is directed toward billionaires. And even though the wealthiest of them typically have been fantastically productive innovators, Mamdani says that billionaires should not exist. It is more about tearing down the rich than raising the poor. Yes, that's true. But why? Because we're negative? Because we just don't like stuff? We just don't like things around us? We just are depressed? And now, he says, even staunch Democratic Party supporters like Matt Iglesias and Noah Smith have wondered whether parts of the progressive left might be explained in part by feelings of depression and also too high a desire to feel outrage. Matt even wrote, quote, more evidence of the increasingly porous boundaries between mental illness and left-wing politics. Remember, Matt is a leftist. Now, they also hate the right. They hate MAGA, more than ever before. People don't want their kids, Democrats don't want their kids to marry a Republican. Social media reinforces the negativity, right? Reinforces everything. Now, Tyler has a core theory about what caused these developments. And he has this theories about psychological contagion. If other people in society become grumpier, we are more likely to become grumpier too. If someone insults us, we're more likely to insult them back. If someone tries to cancel us out of a job and livelihood, we're more likely to retaliate and so on. When psychological contagion, this is a new term for me, is present, social trend can spread quickly, and they also can spread far and wide. If the mood in society becomes more negative, a small initial change in negativity can lead to much larger, longer run boost in bad feelings. It's all about the feelings, guys. I mean, this is Tyler Cowen. This is not some leftist hippie, right? I mean, he then makes the case that the years leading up to World War I, for instance, he says everybody became a lot more depressed. Everybody was a lot more negative. Again, no explanation why they became more depressed and why they became more negative. And he says one can debate the initial causes of such developments, but the relevant point is once they get started, they acquire momentum of their own. And look, I agree. Americans are way too negative. We've talked about this, about how Americans think they're poor. Young Americans think they're the poorest ever. They're not. People think that they can't afford a house unless you live on the West Coast or in New York and in a couple of other places. Most people can't afford a house. You can run the numbers. They think productivity hasn't matched. Or wages haven't matched productivity. They think a lot of bad things. The middle class is shrinking when actually it's becoming richer. Everybody thinks really bad things. There's definitely an epidemic of negativity. But is it really just caused by, is it just emotions? Now, it is interesting that his analysis does, in some respect, follow mine in terms of the specific causes of people's loss of trust, if you will, in the American system, loss of trust in whatever it is we call this, our mixed economy. And he, like I, go back to 9/11, and he says in 2001, hijackers flew planes into Twin Towers, a previously unimaginable event for most Americans. The United States was taken down a peg. The Second Iraq War then failed. The Great Recession came in 2008, following by a slow labor market bounce back. COVID and its aftermath were the next nightmare. Should it be such a huge surprise the negative feelings have dug in and sunk? There's a sense in which that's true. But you have to ask yourself, why were the hijackers able to fly those planes into the buildings? Why did we lose the Iraq War? And what was it about the 2008 recession in particular that drove people to have such a negative view of the current American system? Was it maybe the fact that everybody blamed it on capitalism, and therefore, capitalism must be bad? Or was it the fact that the response of politicians was to bail the banks out, even though they really didn't bail the banks out, but that's the perception? And COVID, what was it about COVID? Was it the government overreach and statism and authoritarianism of the lockdowns? So yes, but what's driving all this? See, I think what's interesting is what's driving. I agree to some extent with Tyler. There's a crazy sense of negativity in the world today. He writes, one strength of the negative contagion explanation for socialist loyalties is that it helps to explain movements on the other side of the political spectrum as well, namely the right wing. And he shows that this negativity also appears on the right wing, particularly about the evil of the left and owning the libs and all of that. And he's right. But what explains it? To boil it down to a feeling can be an explanation. What actually explains it? And how do we get out of it? Now, he says we get out of it somehow. It's possible. This is what he says, which is scary. If you would like some good news, some more good news, and by the way, he says, look, we have the highest standard of living ever. And the highest standard of living for a big country in all the world by far. And he says, we have dramatically falling crime rates. I'm not the only one saying we have dramatically falling crime rates. I know half of you don't believe me, but we do. Crime rates are plummeting. Not just because Trump got elected, but they have been since 2023, or including 2023, since 2022. They went up 2020, 2021, 2022, and then have been plummeting since, back to the historically low crime rates of 2016, when Trump said there was carnage in the streets of America. So in spite of the Trump negativity, which fed off of the right-wing negativity, in spite of that, things are going pretty damn well, except for all the screwing up that Trump is doing. So he says, it is that societies can escape this track of back and forth nastiness they have in the past, such as when Europe built from the horrors of World War II. They had to go through World War II to get out of the melee. When America bounced back from the Civil War, they had to fight a civil war to get out of the melee. And now, as present-day Poland puts its socialism past behind it to become a highly successful and happy nation, they had to live through communism for 40 years in order to come out of the melee. All right, so that is Tyler Cowell's explanation. So what is actually going on here? Why is socialism so appealing to so many people? And again, it's not a majority. It's certainly not a majority once you take into account older individuals and generally Gen Z, the youngest group, is less socialist than the millennials, slightly older than them. So it's not all socialism, but I think the general phenomena of statism on the right and the left is all driven by very similar motivations. Although I think the socialists in some way are just more idealistic than the ones on the right. Although I think that the new right has its own form of idealism, which is similar to socialism. But socialism is viewed generally as nicer and more pleasant than the kind of nationalism of the right. So I think Tyler's really onto something, not by naming emotions, but with this historical perspective of the 21st century, really, in America. And, so it really does have to do with the fact that our current system, which many people, unfortunately, think of as a capitalist system. We are the most capitalist country in the world, and they think of America as capitalist. Our current system has repeatedly failed us over the last 25 years. And it's repeatedly failed us in very big, visible ways. Big, visible ways that have kind of undermined the fact that in spite of all those big ways in which we failed, economically, we've done pretty damn well across every income group and across almost every sector. We've done really pretty damn well. Surprisingly so. I wouldn't have expected us to do this well. So, I agree that it started in 2001, where the question of, well, are we strong? Do we have a competent military? Can we defend ourselves? And can we project power across the world? And can we bring our vision of liberty and freedom to the rest of the world? Can we be a shining city on the hill? And the answer was clearly no. And to blame for that was not the particular policies of the Bush administration. It was not the particular perspective of the Bush administration. It was not the particular way we fought a war. It was not the fact that we let al-Qaeda attack us. It was not the fact that Clinton didn't preempt al-Qaeda. It was not the fact that Bush, engaged in self-sacrificial wars. It was none of that. It was just a doubt, a general doubt that is now well established on the right as well as the left about American efficaciousness, about our military power, about our value as a nation, and about the value of our political system and its ability to be projected out there into the world. And you can see that on the right. Maybe it's more extreme on the right when it comes to foreign policy, because on the right used to be, we're strong. Conservatives used to be tough on foreign policy. They used to be assertive. They used to be pro, self-defense and projecting power out there. And since 9/11, they basically becomes the biggest wusses in the world. They don't want to fight anybody, and they don't. We're no longer. Think about J.D. Vance. We're no longer a country of ideas. Ideas are what we thought we were pre-9/11. Post 9/11, well, if the ideas were so good, how can we fail all the time? How come we can't even beat the Taliban? Or we can't even beat Iraq? We can't even win a stupid war in the Middle East. It can't be that our ideas are so good. So let's retrench back to people and place. And that doesn't commit us to anything out there. And of course, if our ideas are not that good, then, well, Islamism isn't an ideological threat to us. As long as they stay where they are and we stay where we are and we do our thing and they do their thing, their ideas are just as good as our ideas. I mean, conservatives have become multiculturalists, right? Their ideas for them are good. Our ideas for us is good. We just need to purify ours, kick out all the people who don't quite belong and who don't fit, and just live our little cults so that they can live their cults, and each one is separated, and that's the best way to run the world. That's national conservatism. Then came 2008, and 2008 basically said to Americans, your economic system doesn't work. We can, within a few months, it just evaporate huge quantities of wealth. You can lose your home, lose your job, very difficult to get back on your feet. And capitalism failed you. Capitalism doesn't work. And, you know, the pure, unequivocal corruption of the mixed economy was so evident during the financial crisis, more so than any other time, I think, because who got the bailouts? Who whether they were bailouts directly, like what they tried to do with the banks, or whether bailouts at the Fed just bailed everybody out. There was a discount window. You could borrow money from the Fed. Anybody could borrow money from the Fed, whoever wanted to. And then there's quantitative easing. And there's quantitative easing, but who got all that money? Most people didn't feel like they got the money. And the economy recovered, but it recovered slowly. Employment recovered slowly. And a lot of people were like disenchanted with the whole system. And then again, COVID. It kind of separated people. Some people did fine with COVID. If you had a stock portfolio, you did amazing in COVID. Stocks went up, particularly if you had tech stocks. And if you were what they call, right, the laptop class, if you could work from anywhere, you did great. But if you were an essential worker, you didn't have a choice. You're an essential worker. You had to go to work. You had to stand there. And virus, no virus, you had to do your job. And nobody cared about you. And at the same time, small businesses got bailed out, restaurants got bailed out, everybody got bailed out, everybody got a check, right? And yet you were the only ones going to work. Indeed, other people weren't allowed to go to work. So, people came to the conclusion, not the emotion, the conclusion, and the emotion is a result of the conclusion, that the system doesn't work. This particular form, the mixed economy, does not work. And in spite of the fact that the standard of living are going up and they've got better toys and better electronics and they're wealthier and they've got bigger homes and nicer cars and all of that, it doesn't change the conclusion that they came to. And that the current system is rigged. It's rigged in favor of certain people, not the majority, and not, let's call them the working class, or not people who are not well connected, who are not of Wall Street, who are not of the tech industry. It's another form of elite. The whole thing is rigged against, let's call him the common man. And therefore, this system is corrupt. It has to go. And now and that's across the board. Young people believe that. Across the board. One second. And the fact that young people believe that, right, they do, now presents the situation, this quandary. Okay, the mixed economy sucks. I mean, even I agree with that. It does suck. It's terrible. What is the solution? What is the alternative? And they turn to their professors, if they are well educated, and their professors say, socialism. And it's immediately appealing to them. And of course, the non-educated look around and say, well, socialism is associated with those educated people, the elites that we don't like, that teach in the universities and have all their woke ideas. So what's an alternative to the mixed economy that is not socialism? Well, it's nationalism. And basically, you see this bifurcation. young people are going to go to socialism or to nationalism. They're looking for something. What they've rejected wholeheartedly is the status quo, and they associate the status quo with capitalism. And that's not just, I mean, a lot of that is just ignorance. How are they supposed to know that there's such a thing called capitalism based on a system of individual rights, where the government's sole job is to protect individual rights and where economics is separate from politics? Who teaches that? Nobody teaches that that's capitalism. Almost everybody teaches that what we have is capitalism. Maybe it's skewed a little bit. Maybe it should be a little bit more free. I mean, Tyler himself is not that adamant about defining capitalism pretty clearly, and probably doesn't believe in the capitalism I believe in. And Tyler is, again, a libertarian economist, and a good one. So where are they going to find out about a principled system of capitalism as an alternative to the mixed economy? The only thing that inspires idealism is either socialism or nationalism. Now, socialism appeals more than nationalism because socialism is more intellectual than nationalism. Nationalism is kind of blood and soil and has always appealed to the more unthinking, ignorant. Socialism has much more of a construct. It's got a long, lengthy intellectual appeal. And the professors at the universities are going to be supportive of this. Now, of course, one of the things that makes socialism so damn appealing is that these kids are being taught from when they're very young, when they're very little, that sharing is caring, right? Sharing is good. So it's not just some instinct that we have to share. We've been taught that sharing is good, sharing is wonderful, sharing is beautiful. We've been taught since we were very little that, you have to take care of the weak, you have to take care of others. Your job really is the taking care of other people. So teach according to his needs, from each according to his ability, just sounds right. It sounds right. It sounds fair. It sounds just, because that is the sense of justice that everybody's been taught forever, really. So they want to be just. They want to be good. They want to be moral. They want to be good altruists. They might not want to live it, but they want in their minds to be good altruists. And what they really don't want, and what they really don't trust, and what they really think has betrayed them, is capitalism, greed, self-interest, business, individualism. Because that's all associated with the mixed economy that they live with. People pursuing their own self-interest, making a lot of money for themselves, consuming that money for their own well-being, not caring enough about their fellow man and their neighbor. And that all just seems wrong to them, even though they all have a little bit of that. I mean, think about who voted for Mamdani. It was a bunch of Brooklyn-based young professionals who make a lot of money and are frustrated by the fact that other people are not making as much money as they are. I mean, poor people did not vote for Mamdani. The votes all came from relatively wealthy people, wealthy young people. They think that, the poor people deserve a government-run grocery store. I mean, they are not going to give up their Whole Foods and their Trader Joe's, but poor people, they need the government to take care of them. And they're willing to sacrifice a little bit. They're willing to pay higher taxes so that grocery store can actually run. And, they've been convinced that private sector can't handle grocery stores. like food deserts. Have you heard of that term? Poor areas don't have food deserts. They don't have grocery stores. And of course, Elizabeth Warren has told them over and over and over again that it's grocery stores that are responsible for inflation. That's why prices went up and why other people can't afford their groceries. They can afford their groceries, but other people can't. So they're driven by altruism. They're driven by collectivism. They're not eager to go sacrifice, but they're willing to pay higher taxes. They're willing to go out one last night a month to a nice restaurant so that they can feel good about having taken care of the poor through socialist policies. And they have no problems with saying, yeah, there should be no billionaires, even though most of them probably work for billionaires and probably wouldn't have a job if they weren't billionaires. A lot of them are techies. A lot of them are in the financial industry. And they work for investment banks run by billionaires, and they work for hedge funds run by billionaires, and they work for tech companies run by billionaires. But they don't really, so what? I mean, they don't consider the productive genius of a billionaire anything extraordinary, right? They're smart too, is the way I think they think about it. What's so special about billionaires? So, what's driving this is a real disenchantment with the mixed economy. No idealistic alternative for more freedom presented to them. They have a choice between the idealism of nationalism, which seems kind of grubby and associated with fascists, Nazis, and they don't want to have anything to do with that, and the kind of utopia of socialism, which sounds kind of cool if we don't take it too seriously, but sounds kind of cool. People get to do what they want, get to make what they want. How we get there, we don't know. And we decide all decisions within business democratically. And there's this one example of a labor-run business in Spain that is so wonderful, not very competitive, and it's not as utopian as the socialists would like you to believe. But they're presented with this rosy picture, and okay, but at least it feels right. At least it sounds just. At least the poor are taken care of, and there are no billionaires to exploit all of us. And yeah, maybe I'd have to give up a few things, although they don't know how much. And yeah, we don't want the socialism of Venezuela, but we wouldn't get the socialism of Venezuela because whatever. And yeah, there are too many prisons because they don't really, as I said, crime rates are plummeting, so they don't really experience that much crime with crime rates plummeting. So who needs prisons? And so what the socialists give them is an idealized vision of what the world can be under socialism, and the fact that it doesn't abide by economic principles. I mean, they would justifiably say, somewhat justifiably say, how much of those economic principles helped you avoid the financial crisis? They didn't. And what about this amazing inequality, which, again, they've been told exists, even though it doesn't? But where do your financial principles play into that? And these billionaires, weren't we taught in economics class that perfect competition is ideal? In perfect competition, you can't have billionaires? And the only reason we're billionaires is because we have monopolies, and how does that happen? So something's wrong with economics we're taught. So, we don't know. Who knows what will happen? It seems reasonable to assume that if you put price controls on rent, and prices won't go up, and that's good. And hey, that's good. And that appeals a little bit to wanting free stuff, although they won't be the ones living in price controls housing, I don't think. And the same is, so they don't know economics, but they don't worry about not knowing economics because economics has done that well as a profession in their mind. because it's associated with all the crises and all the problems. Like, there were a lot of really good economists at the Fed, and yet we got inflation. What do you guys know about economics? And in terms of history, they don't know much, very little actually. They've been taught by the intellectuals who whitewash socialism, whitewash communism. So they've never got the real essence, the brutality of it, the irrationality of it, the poverty of it, the destructiveness of socialism. And they probably think, oh, socialism is just like a kibbutz, and a kibbutz, my parents, volunteered in a kibbutz, and they had a good time on a kibbutz when they volunteered. Yeah, their parents didn't tell them most of the kibbutzim, or almost all the kibbutzim are gone because they can't make it either economically or socially. Unbelievably destructive. Socialism, everywhere it's tried, is unbelievably destructive, not just materially, but spiritually too, because the reality is those who are more productive will always resent those who are less productive if they all have the same outcome. The guy with ability is going to resent the guy with need, ultimately. And the guy, and he's going to resent him because why should he have the same as me when I produce so much more? And he's also going to doubt whether the guy with need really has a need or is just lazy. How do you know? Is he stupid or is he lazy? But the thing is, the guy with need is also always going to resent the guy with ability. Because how come he has ability and I don't? How come I have to depend on him? I don't want that. I want to be equal to him. I don't want to just be equal to him, economically. I want to be equal to him. I don't want to be as able, as competent as he is. Why am I not? Something's wrong. I resent it. It's not right. So socialism breeds resentment. It breeds hatred. It breeds antagonism and infighting. And every socialist regime is like this. It always does it. In the kibbutz is a great example. The social environment within a kibbutz, unbelievably destructive. Unbelievably destructive because of this resentment that is constantly going on. So what is the cause of the rise in socialism and nationalism? It's the failure of the mixed economy. Even though it's incredibly successful, everybody gets a sense that it's not as successful as it could be. And there's definitely an inbuilt injustice about this success. Talk about people being bailed out, cronyism, and so on. So in spite of the fact that we're rich, there's something just wrong with this mixed economy. It isn't right. No voice, no idealistic voice presenting capitalism. Yeah, if you understood economics, capitalism is better. You can see if we move towards more freedom, deregulate a little bit, lower government spending a little bit, then things get better. We could even be richer. Yeah, but that's not what interests them. What about the justice of it? What about the righteousness of it? Who is out there defending capitalism as the just system, the moral system, the good system, the system? And who defends individualism as just, moral, and good? And who defends self-interest and greed, properly understood, as just, moral, and good? Nobody. So they can't accept the current system. So then what are they left with? So they can't accept the current system. Nobody is defending capitalism. Nobody is pushing them towards a principled defense of capitalism. The most you have is the libertarians, who are horrible on so many fronts. And maybe the biggest one is they refuse to provide an actual moral defense of capitalism. They certainly refuse to provide an actual moral defense of individualism or of self-interest. They try to couch capitalism as somehow, benefiting the worst off. That's the reason. Or somehow, that capitalism is consistent with altruism. It's not. Everybody knows it's not. You can pretend. So they hold on to their old morality. They hold on to their old epistemology of emotion, by the way, which is exactly why this all boils down to feelings in the end, right? Of emotion. Instead of advocating for reason and for egoism and for an idealism of Atlas Shrugged, the idealism of capitalism, the idealism of a beautiful system of individualism and freedom. A system of freedom. What can be better than that? And what's more ideal than that? Libertarians are begrudgingly pro-free markets. Or who are you to tell me what to do kind of libertarians, right? Again, all feeling, no reason. So there's no idealism of capitalism other than Ayn Rand, and libertarians reject that. And all they're left with is either socialism or nationalism as alternatives to mixed economy. Capitalism's out. Nobody's defending that. Real capitalism. And it's not noble or moral. We know that because it's self-interested. Okay, so what's consistent with my morality? What's consistent with my philosophy? It's, either one form of collectivism or another form of collectivism. But the one thing we cannot abandon is collectivism. And the reason socialism beats out nationalism with most young people, most educated people, is because it's more consistently altruistic, it's more egalitarian, it's more universal. They the one thing they don't want to be is racists or anything that exclusionary, and that's why they want something universal. Socialism is universal, and universality will always appeal more to educated people than a xenophobic, racist, exclusionary type of idea like nationalism. So the socialists are willing to fight for it. Their academics preach it. How many academics in academia today are adamant defenders on both our philosophical and our economic perspective of capitalism? And yet almost all academics are going to be willing to defend socialism morally. It's consistent with the prevalent philosophy out there. It's consistent with altruism and emotionalism. So it's altruism and emotionalism and the lack of a capitalist voice, a capitalist, idealism that is driving young people, educated young people in particular, to socialism, and the uneducated young people who don't care about universalism, if you will, to nationalism. Bottom line is we're losing. We're losing in spite of the fact that the mixed economy is doing pretty well, much better than I would have expected. And that is tragic and sad. And Tyler says, after a big war, after a big conflict, we can recover. And his examples are World War II, and which is a recovery from the pre-World War I kind of move towards socialism and nationalism. Remember, that's exactly what happened before World War I. Socialism, nationalism, and it gets played out, World War I, and then it ultimately gets played out in World War II, and doesn't really get resolved until the fall of the Berlin Wall in favor of the mixed economy. Not in favor of capitalism with a big C, but in favor of the mixed economy. If we want to combat socialism, voices in favor of capitalism need to be a lot stronger, They need to be a lot more principled. They need to address the issues brought up by the failure of the mixed economy. But more importantly, it needs to be philosophical. It needs to have a philosophical foundation, a philosophical basis. And it needs to inspire. This is what Ayn Rand does so well. She inspires. And we need to continue to inspire. Otherwise, we lose them. We can't just defend the mixed economy. Nobody's interested in that. All right. Thank you, guys. That is my why socialism doesn't die or doesn't go away. And look, let's be very clear. Socialism is evil. It's an evil ideology. It's the ideology that subjugates the individual to the group. It's an ideology that sacrifices the able to the needy. It's an ideology that sacrifices the productive to the unproductive. It's an ideology that rejects freedom, individual liberty. It's an ideology that crumbles and makes us poor. It's an ideology that doesn't work in a sense of it fails the test of reality. It makes us poorer everywhere to the extent that it's tried. And even every little piece of it, like rent control or city-run grocery stores, are going to fail by the standard of being able to sustain themselves. So it's an ideology that requires constant subsidy. And who's the only people who can subsidize it? The only people who can subsidize it are the productive, the virtuous, the individualists. So, there is, just as nationalism is evil, socialism is just as evil. Communism is just as evil as Nazism. A communist should be treated exactly in polite society like you would treat a Nazi. A socialist should be treated exactly as you would treat a nationalist. These are evil ideologies that are destructive of the individual and destructive of human life, And we need to start talking about them that way. We're way too polite about socialism. Less so about, let's say, Nazis or about fascists, but we're way too polite about socialists. Because it's much more appealing to people's common perspective of altruism. I mean, Frank is talking about collaboration. I mean, collaboration is based on trading values. Collaboration is based on shared values, trading values, but a trade, win-win. Socialism is about the sacrifice of values, the sacrifice of ability to need, the sacrifice of productiveness to non-productiveness. So it destroys the ability to collaborate because it destroys the ability to trade. We're not supposed to trade. We're supposed to give. We're supposed to share. Whereas capitalism is about trade. Mutually beneficial trade. Socialism is about whatever the needy wants it to be about. All right. Let's go to your super chats, I guess. Let me thank a few of the stickers. Mike, thank you. Wes, thank you. Let's see. Mike, Wes, a lot of 5 and under questions. Capital Spy, thank you. $10 questions, a lot of $10 questions, $5 questions. Yep, I got everybody who did a sticker. Thanks, guys. I'll just remind you of a few things. One, you could support the show on patreon.com or on paypal.com. just your Yaron Brook Show and become a monthly supporter. Monthly support is incredibly valued and valuable because, this is a show supported by listeners like you, and couldn't do it without you. And to the extent that you gain a value, trade value for value. The monthly stuff is predictable and it's great. Octavio says, liberté, égalité, fraternité are the promises of capitalism. No, they're not. They're the promises of the French Revolution, which was a Rousseauing revolution, a left-wing revolution. The promise of capitalism, real capitalism, was the protection of individual rights. The American Revolution was the capitalist revolution, and it worked pretty damn well. Now, it hasn't worked perfectly because capitalism hasn't been implemented perfectly, but it's worked pretty damn well. French Revolution failed dramatically because it was a Rousseau leftist revolution, and it led to blood and disaster, an exact opposite of liberté, égalité, and fraternité. But that's to be expected. All right. Okay, beyond that, we have a target. We're going to go into the second hour. We're not quite, we're close to the target of the first hour, but not quite there. I think we're still $19 short of the target for the first hour. And then we've got to make up another $250 for the second hour, so please consider doing that. If you're going to ask additional questions, please consider doing so for $20 rather than the $5 and $10 questions. It's hard to get to where we need to go with the 5 or 10, although I answer all of them. But if you can't afford it and if you value it enough, then please consider doing the questions at $20 or more so we can chip away at the goal. A $20 question right now would be perfect because that would get us to the first hour goal. We've just crossed the first hour as it is. And finally, we've got 3 sponsors. The Ayn Rand Institute, which is offering 30% discounts on Ocon, plus another $10 on top of 10% on top of that for Yaron Brook Show listeners. You go to aynrand.org/start here. You go sign up for Ocon 2026, which is in New Orleans at the end of June. It's going to be fantastic. Don't know what my talk is going to be about, but it'll be good. It'll be fun. And so sign up. If you use the code 26YBS10, 26YBS10, then you'll get that extra 10% discount on top of the 30% discount. Now, at some point, that is going to run out, the 30%. And you'll be stuck with only 10%. And you'll regret it because it'll be a lot more expensive. Right now is the time to buy because it's really, really, really cheap to go to Ocon right now. And it's going to be a lot of fun in New Orleans. So join us. Alex Epstein, the #1 voice in the world on all things energy, electricity, power, and actually what's going on right now in Washington in terms of energy. And you can read all about it on his Substack, alexepstein.substack.com. You can support him. You'll get talking points, make you a better communicator, better think about these things. Everybody should be subscribers to the Alex Epstein Substack. And then finally, Hendershot Wealth Management. You can go to hendershotwealth.com/YBS, hendershotwealth.com/YBS. For the new product they've launched that is focused on dramatically reducing your capital gains liabilities, tax-wise, your capital gains tax liabilities, and by deferring them way into the future. In particular, if you're sitting on a lot of appreciated stock, or if you're sitting on a company you're about to sell, and you're going to get a one-time massive capital gains tax bill, then you want to talk to them. So first thing is, check out the website, Hendershot. It's 2 T's, Hendershot, 2 T's, wealth.com/YBS. And you can watch the video of me interviewing Robert Hendershot about this product, and you can see if it fits you or not. And that's on my YouTube channel. Just look at playlists for sponsors, and you'll find it there. So, yeah, do it. All right, remind you, Patreon. Those of you listening who are not here to do Super Chat, I'm reminding you to do Super Chat. But those of you who are not here to do Super Chat, patreon.com. Become, and if you can afford at 100 or 250 or 500 or 1,000, that'd be amazing. But, $5, $10, you get the podcast, whatever, the link, so that you can listen to all the podcasts ad-free with no advertising. A lot of you have asked for that over the years. I now provide it, but you just need to become a $10 subscriber on a month on Patreon. I think not having ads is worth $10. I think so. Oh, and finally, I have to say this. We are very close, very, very, very close to 40,000 subscribers. So right there on the cusp of 40,000 subscribers, we have right now, I'll tell you how many we have as of this moment. We have 39,962. In other words, we are 38 subscribers short of the number of 40,000, which is just a nice round number, fairly big, not as big as 50 or 100 or a million, but fairly big. And help us. If you're listening to the show, if you're watching it on YouTube after the fact, while we're doing it live, if you're on Twitter, there are like 200 people watching it on Twitter, 200 people watching on Twitter, come on over to YouTube and become a subscriber. You'll find out about new shows. I mean, you should follow me on Twitter, but also come over to YouTube, become a subscriber, and help us get to the 40,000. I mean, it's just a number, but we like to document the numbers as we get there. So it would be cool if we could get the next 38 this month. Like, we got 11 days to do it. It depends. Sometimes 11 days is plenty to get 38. Sometimes you get it in a day, and sometimes it takes a month to get it. But it could be that we get 38. So please consider doing that. Help me build an audience, build influence. And of course, the more subscribers I have, the more YouTube elevates my content. That's true of liking. So please like the show and comment and do all the things that you do on YouTube. Comment and like and subscribe. All right. Let's turn to the super chat. James asks, do you see China or other Asian countries surpassing the U.S. in economic freedom? Since Asia has never been shackled by Christian altruism, do they have a higher likelihood of breaking free of the mixed economy before we do? I mean, it's certainly possible. So I was very positive on China before Xi, before like 2016, 17, 18, certainly 2019. And the reason was exactly that. They don't have Jesus looking down on them from the cross, demanding sacrifice and demanding altruism. And they have a certain pragmatic attitude that elevates results, which you'd think would support capitalism. But this is the problem. It's the same as the problem here. They don't have a positive view of capitalism. There's no positive theory of capitalism. And here's the real challenge. And this is the reason the West outdid China, in my view. And maybe that's changing, but it'll be interesting to see. It needs support. The West had Aristotle. And what Aristotle really gives the West are two concepts which really don't exist in China, in Chinese philosophy: reason and individualism. Now, Aristotle is not exactly an individualist, but his ethics are individualistic. They're about the individual pursuing his own flourishing. So that is big. And but the thing that really is problematic with the Chinese is they don't have the concept of reason. Now, it could be now that they're better educated. The European Enlightenment has an impact on them. They're big on science. They were always big on technology in the past, but it never really developed, and it never became science because they didn't have reason. Now, maybe now with science they have reason, Maybe they now will internalize the idea of the efficaciousness of reason and now put aside kind of a cultural mysticism that they had historically. But that's the concept that was missing. It's why Europe overtook China, because Europe embraced reason and through it individualism. Now, will it happen? I don't know. I hope so. As I told you, I hope Xi is on the way out. I hope ultimately China shrugs off this kind of nationalism that dominates it today and embraces freedom. But it's going to be difficult because it's while it's not altruistic in the Christian sense, it's very collectivistic. It's very nationalistic once it replaced communism with nationalism. And it doesn't have a solid foundation in kind of reason, individualism, political liberty. That's the trilogy, right, of ideas: reason, individualism, moral individualism, and then political individualism, which means individual rights and political freedom. And without a voice like Ayn Rand, how are they going to get that? Where's it going to come from? They need to embrace the Enlightenment, but they need to embrace the more developed Enlightenment of Ayn Rand than the previous Enlightenment that kind of failed. So, hard to tell, but there is a chance. And look, all of Ayn Rand's books are translated into Chinese. I know a lot of Chinese have read her. There was a lot of openness to her ideas when I was there, when I traveled there. We can hope that because they don't have the altruism, the kind of Western form of altruism, they will embrace it more rapidly. But it's going to be a slog. It's going to be hard. It's going to be a real effort, an ideological battle, no matter where it lands up being. Hopper Campbell, when you observe the nastiness of betrayal and lack of integrity all around you, doesn't it feel like we're living in a zero-sum world? Like we're living in the Squid Games. That's why shows like that are attractive. Yeah, but they're not, because it's not a zero-sum game, and it doesn't feel like a zero-sum game. I don't feel like a zero-sum game. You know, you got to live a good life. I produce, I consume, I get to use amazing technology. Technology didn't exist anywhere close to this, 20 years ago, and technology didn't exist at all in my lifetime. I can see the potential for unbelievable technology. When is it, from a health perspective, when is it better in all of human history to be a 60-year-old, right? In your 60s. It's, there's more advice and science around how to stay fit and how to stay healthy and how to live way into your 90s and beyond. If you follow just some basic principles. As you know, I love my iPhone. It's not here. I don't know where I put it. But out of my iPhone, I mean, I am so thankful for all the amazing stuff that I have. And I love movies and I love TV shows. I can sit on my couch and using a remote control, flip through gazillions of movies and gazillions of TV shows. And globalization is such a success that I can sit on Netflix and I can choose to watch programs in all kinds of languages. I mean, you watch the Squid Games. I mean, that's a Korean show. And here you are sitting in America watching a sophisticated show made in Korea by Korean artists. Whenever in all of human history could you do anything close to that? I mean, this is an amazing time to be alive. And I don't see the nastiness and betrayal. I went to one of my favorite restaurants today. I know the chef. He's a really nice guy. The wait staff there is amazing. They're super friendly. The food is delicious and healthy. And what's nasty? Where is this lack? I mean, politics is nasty and there's lack of integrity. Yes, when we get philosophical, a businessman, a pragmatist, and they don't know often what they're talking about. Okay, but you don't live in a nasty world that is full of betrayal. On your day-to-day life, you just don't. And if you do, leave, move somewhere else. Like the people around you are mostly productive, mostly people engaged in their own lives. All right, so a bunch of yuppie, I don't know if yuppie's still a word, yippie, whatever, Brooklyn, spoiled brats voted for a socialist for the mayor of New York. We will survive that. New York will survive that. It will. Evil does not have power, does not efficacious. And you're surrounded by competence. If you weren't surrounded by competence, there'd be traffic accidents every 3 seconds on the road outside your home. I mean, driving, one of those, you drive a car on a highway in California, and then millions of cars zipping around you, all at 80 miles an hour. And, sometimes they're accidents, but they're pretty rare. That requires a lot of efficaciousness. So I don't get that. A politician's scum? Yeah, absolutely. As MAGA scum? Absolutely. As a socialist scum? Absolutely. Most people are not that and not that. And even some of them who are, compartmentalize, and in their day-to-day lives and in their work lives and in their, their consumer lives, they're okay people. We've got a crazy socialist on the chat, but he's one of these. He has to put everything in all caps to make sure you read it and see it. All right, I will remind you guys: super chats, stickers. 122 people listening. Come on, couple of bucks each, and we're done. Value for value. Assuming you value the show, even the socialist Octavio, you should do a sticker. $2. You can afford $2. I don't know actually. Maybe socialists can't afford $2, but the rest of you are not socialist. You should definitely afford $2. There we go. Esoteric dichotomy doing 99 cents. That's great. 99 cents is good too. Good too. Neo, thanks for having a show today. My pleasure. Always good to slam socialism. It's always a good day. Hopper Campbell, do intellectuals today feel they have an obligation to prevent Nazi-type ideology from rising again? I think some do. I certainly think the better ones do. Of course, many of them are quite left, but they really, and a lot of, I think, the motivation around voting for a socialist right now, some of the motivation is a negative motivation, as Tyler described. It's hatred of Trump. It's hatred of MAGA. And so they're going to vote for the thing most removed from Trump and MAGA. Just like the motivation for a lot of people on the right is to vote for anything that looks as far away from the left as possible, far away from woke as possible. So, yes, I do think a lot of people feel obliged to prevent Nazi-type ideology. What they don't feel obliged is to prevent communist-type ideology, which is sad. Michael, highest energy costs in the nation are in leftist states that have undermined low-cost energy. Yep, I think that's true. Certainly, California must have some of the highest costs of energy. Probably New York, I'm not sure, because they get a lot of hydro from Canada, as long as Canada doesn't put tariffs on it. So I don't know if prices in New York are that expensive. I don't know. But yeah, it makes sense. The environmental regulations to prevent cheap energy is a real problem. Real problem. Hopper Campbell, even though Marx was a loser, his ideas were able to dominate half the planet by the 1950s. Was he just writing altruism coattails, or was he really a genius? I don't think he was a genius, but he definitely rode altruism coattails. But he also had, I think the thing about Marx is he had very competent students. He had very savvy promoters and defenders and people who articulated his ideas out there in the world. And he had people, a minority, but people who were willing to go to the barricades, to fight, to really struggle for his ideas. Marx was actually fairly still obscure until the Russian Revolution. And the Russian Revolution, which was really Lenin, really elevated Marx to where he was in the 1950s because they succeeded. And they showed it was possible, and they had this great propaganda, and they managed to fool everybody or bribe everybody or appeal to the altruism, but people, embraced the Soviet Union. They embraced communist Russia under Lenin and Stalin. And, it allowed Marx to become as popular as he did. And he articulated an entire theory. He wasn't just an economist. He articulated an entire theory, and he left with a utopia. He ends with a utopia. Doesn't explain how to get there, but he ends with a utopia. He allows for a certain level of idealism, and he is he presented all as being scientific. He presents it, even though it's not, and it's the opposite of scientific, but he presents it as scientific. But he's massively capitalizing on Christianity, not just on altruism, but also on mysticism, on this idea of some kind of truth beyond the individual. So on intrinsicism and the leader, the Communist Party, the proletarian who channel the truth to the people. So he's capitalizing on a lot of the bad ideas that existed in the West before him. All right, thank you, Florida Nick. Thank you, Normative Randroid. Another 99 cents. I love it. Let's just do a bunch of 99 cents. Let's everybody do 99 cents. That would be cool. We'll see how many of you do it. James, the left never wanted to reduce poverty. They wanted to universalize it. I don't think that's true. I don't think they want to universalize it. What they want is they want to destroy the productive. What they want is to destroy the billionaires. They don't think to themselves, we want to make everybody poor. They delude themselves that they somehow do not make everybody poor by destroying the capitalists, by destroying those who have, by destroying the men of ability. Octavio is funny. He says, we give free work to capitalists. Free? Nobody gives his work free. You get subsidized by the capitalist. You get paid by the capitalist. Much more than you could earn without him. You are exploiting the capitalist left and right. You're exploiting your employer. You're exploiting the business. You're exploiting the CEO. The wage that you get from the business is much more than you could earn without it. Much, much more. Which means you're the ones doing the exploiting. Ayn Rand called that the reverse pyramid of ability. She called that the pyramid of ability, the reversal of the Marxist pyramid. It's not capitalists exploiting the workers. If anybody's exploiting anybody, and nobody is exploiting anybody, just to be clear, it's the workers exploiting management, CEO, and the capitalist, because they wouldn't have a job without them. They wouldn't have any income without them. They'd indeed die of starvation without them. The only reason there are 8 billion people in the world today is because of the little bit of capitalism we've embraced. Without that little bit of capitalism, without it, billions of people would be dead. They would have never been born. We'd all still be, the world would still be at 500 million people, which is what it was around when capitalism was born, and we'd still be dirt poor, all of us, living on $2 a day or less. That's the world socialism envisions. And that's what happens every time socialism is tried. Jacob, thank you, Esoteric Economy, for another 99 cents. See, it's happening slowly. Jacob Collins, since today's free market thinkers always default to materialism in explaining socialism's rise, well, Tyler devolved to, emotionalism. Do you view it as evasion at a large scale? I do. I think for some people it's evasion, for others it's not. I think the people who, certainly the people who have been exposed to Ayn Rand's works, exposed to the idea of that capitalism requires a moral defense, exposed to the idea of a morality of self-interest, exposed to the idea of real individualism. I think for them it's an evasion. I think for others it's ignorance and naivete and not being able to think outside of the moral box that they were handed to by the culture. Which is altruism. Raphael, if socialism worked, people would stop being socialist. Failure and see people sacrificing their self-interest to the common good makes it attractive. I think that's right, but if socialism worked, we'd be a different kind of animal and everything would be different, right? So the impossibility of it is built in, right? James, Mamdani said he wants to convert private apartment complexes into community ownership, committing to a new era of social housing. He's barely masking the communist lingo. Yeah, I mean, look, he is a kind of a committed socialist, a real socialist, borderline communist. He's avoiding communism because it's associated with authoritarianism. But that's what he is. He's a Rousseauian. He doesn't believe in prisons. He doesn't believe in police. He believes that civilizing us is what makes us criminal. And if you do communal housing, and if the state, or not the state, but the workers own the means of production, then crime goes to zero and it's kumbaya. He is a delusional, power lusting, crazy person. I mean, it's completely detached from reality, completely detached from facts, community ownership, community ownership of housing, state ownership of housing. That's not new. It's not new in America. It's not new anywhere in the world, and it doesn't lead to positive outcomes, with the exception of Singapore, where it's kind of a very much a hybrid system. Michael says, a new Jubilee video just came out titled I Progressive versus 20 Far-Right Conservatives. These young Trump supporters are Catholic socialist racists. Some twisted form of Nazism is arising. Ooh, I need to watch that. Okay. I wonder when they're going to have me as a capitalist versus 20 young socialists. That would be fun. See if they'll do that. Anybody have an in with Jubilee? See if they'll let me take on 20 progressives. And no, the mixed of progressives and right-wing nuts. Liam, is there a higher likelihood of getting food poisoning in Puerto Rico because of all the socialism and inefficiencies? Which food did you get sick from? Hope you're feeling better. I don't know which food I got sick from. I don't think there's a higher chance in Puerto Rico of getting, food poisoning. I haven't got much food poisoning in Puerto Rico. Last time I got basically the same symptoms I had here. I was in Clemson. Almost the same symptoms, very similar symptoms. So, I don't know. I don't think so. And I think that was a day where basically everything I ate at home. So it could have been something we'd bought at the grocery store, pre-packed, that had something in it. I don't know. That's the thing. I wish I knew. It would be much easier if you know, and then, but I don't. I don't know that there's any more likelihood to get food poisoning here. Again, the restaurants are really nice, and if you're buying prepackaged food in a sense, hummus or whatever, it's coming from America. It's not being produced here, and the rest. I don't think I think the restaurants are pretty good. Yeah. Don't know how I got it. Frank, thank you. Frank just did $50 super chat. Thank you, Frank. Did you ever consider the fact that your world travel and the importance of honing your collaborative skills, foreign languages, customs, etc., is the essence of capitalism's aspirations? I'm trying to understand the question exactly. But I mean, I consider world travel and I don't have skills in foreign languages, but I do think capitalism is the system of globalization, and it's a system for people who feel at home in the world. I think it's one of the reasons people who are afraid of the world, who are afraid of the other, who are afraid of other cultures, who are afraid of people who don't look like them, turn against capitalism, because it's not suited for people like that. Yaron Brook, who's a really good author out of Sweden, has a book called Open, which is really good. It's all about the fact that, a good society is an open society. It's open to new ideas. It's open to new people. It's open to new customs. It's open to open to trade with foreign people. It's open to new experiences. It's open to travel. And I think capitalism is best suited, and capitalism very much embraces globalization in all its aspects, in its trade, in its cultural, in its, both economic and spiritual aspects. And I very much find that is true for me. I like the idea of being able to, and be able to embrace the world. And the world is an amazing, beautiful place. It is an amazing, beautiful place. And there's so many interesting things. And there's so many interesting people, and there's so many interesting just sights. So many interesting things about culture, so many interesting foods, so many interesting, art and architecture and aesthetics and everything. And to just be focused on, oh no, this is my country. This is all I care about. This is everything. This is what needs to be preserved. This is what needs to be protected. And I never leave here, and I don't want anybody to come here. And it's just such a narrow view of life, and it's an anti-capitalist view of life. It's a conservative view of life. The first conservatives, the first German conservatives were people in Germany who were really upset by capitalism's changing the way of life of German communities, and the urbanization. They resented urbanization. They want everybody to stay in their little villages in Germany, and stay in the communal context and family and village and town and tribe, and they resented capitalism as, and this became a anti-Semitic slur, as cosmopolitan, as embracing the world, and yeah, I think of myself as somebody who embraces the world, and I think that is what capitalism is. Partially, it's the kind of psychology that opens you up to capitalism, that makes capitalism, you feel comfortable with capitalism, but capitalism requires that. You can't have capitalism, my isolated little thing, and we're never gonna go out. That's not capitalism, and it won't survive. So if you're gonna live maximally. And living maximally means go figure out what's the best out there. Not just the best in your little, blood and soil little corner of the world, but what's the best anywhere and everywhere. So, yeah. So today, Frank is number one fan, according to this. I guess it's a combination of the super chat and the chat and your participation in the chat. Jonathan says, Konstantin Kisin is not Ukrainian, he is Russian. Oh, wait, my mistake. He is Russian. Sorry about that. I don't know why I thought he was Ukrainian. Maybe because he's pro-Ukraine in the war, but a lot of Russians are. All right. Jennifer, do you think women on average are more sensitive to emotions because they are wired to deal more with small children who are less verbal? I don't know. I mean, maybe I worry about wiring and suggesting wiring explanations for things. So I'm not sure. There could be a certain wiring that makes you, I guess, more sensitive to emotions, more sensitive to your own emotions, and then as a consequence, more sensitive to others' emotions. It could be hormonal. The wiring could be hormonal. Certain hormones make you more emotional. I know when I take certain drugs, they make me more emotional. Drugs can have a real impact on how you respond to things. I'm talking about medication drugs, not the other kind of drugs. So it could be, and it could be an evolutionary thing because of motherhood and the need to take care of young. But I worry about stories like that to try to explain that. I don't know how good those explanations really are. Usually they're just so stories. But I don't know if they're really based on science. But yeah, there's something there, but I don't know if that's the reason. I don't know if that's the reason. Or maybe it just happens that the hormones that make pregnancy possible and make a woman hospitable to a fetus, to the growth of a child inside of her, ultimately what will be a child inside of her, also the hormones that also regulate emotions to some extent. And so the two are related in some way, whether for evolutionary reasons or by accident. I don't know. Thank you, Jennifer. All right, we've chipped away. I haven't seen a lot of 99 cents ones. I thought we were going to do a 99-cent day. All right, let's see. Michael, why is unemployment so low despite all the taxes and regulations? Are there mostly crappy, low-paying, low-wage and part-time jobs? No, I mean, there are good jobs out there, and there are a bunch, hundreds of thousands of jobs that go unfilled. And yes, some of them are fake jobs, but most of them are real. Why is unemployment so low? Because in spite of everything, American business keeps producing, keeps creating. Entrepreneurs keep starting businesses and keep creating new products. People keep finding ways around the regulations and ways to grow their businesses in spite of everything. And they need employees. So, I mean, but no, the jobs are not crappy. The jobs are pretty good. I mean, there's a massive need right now for jobs in construction of, these AI massive server farms, cloud farms. And then there's going to be huge numbers of people who are going to be needed to maintain those things. And those are going to be high-paying jobs. And I don't think they need a master's degree in computer science, but they're going to need certain technical knowledge, but not at a very high level. But they're going to need people to maintain the servers, to maintain these computers, to maintain the cooling system, to maintain the electricity, just to maintain these things. And they're going to be really good-paying jobs, and they're going to be huge. there's just going to be all kinds of new jobs that people can't imagine today. And good paying jobs. Not your average algorithm. Peter Schiff seems to think Trump will chicken out of his tariff pledges moving forward. Do you agree? I mean, I saw no reason to believe that he's going to chicken out, but I don't know. I think trying to predict Trump is a fool's errand. I hope Peter's right. I hope he's right. But I wouldn't count on it. I think this is one thing that Trump is obsessed by. I really think he's obsessed by it. And he really believes in it. And look, I'm preparing my talk on trade for the Peterson Academy, right? Remember, I'm doing the Peterson Academy thing, and if you'd like to be a live student at my Peterson Academy classes in Arizona, send me an email, yaron@yaronbrookshow.com, and I can send you the link to where you can register and sign up and become a student, be there, which would be a lot of fun. It'd be nice to have a bunch of you there. It's this coming week, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and then next week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Anyway, trade is Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. And I'm reading a lot about the history of trade in the United States. And most of American history, certainly almost all of American history pre-World War II, pre-1933 certainly, was very high tariffs. Very, very high tariffs. And the only reason it wasn't unbelievably destructive, it was, but it wasn't really destructive, you don't see the destructiveness of it, is because the economy grew so fast for other reasons. Because there was so much more freedom. And we have an economy that is very resilient to all these things. So from the founding, do you know that the most contentious issue in 19th century America, with exception, second only to slavery, were tariffs? And that it was Republicans who were dominantly pro-tariffs and Democrats who were dominantly anti-tariffs? And it was generally the South that was anti-tariffs and the North that was pro-tariffs, and all kinds of fascinating stuff. Anyway, tariffs are not unusual. They're much more common. What's unusual is free trade. And I think Trump knows that. And he's returning the Republicans to where they've always been, pre-World War II. Clark, there are so many evil implicit messages in the culture that if you don't choose the path of suffering, you're not a good person. Yeah, most people believe that, but I hope you know that that's a false choice. Clark, if Mamdani wins, will many New Yorkers move to New Jersey where his policies won't affect them while they still commute to work in NYC? Well, but it'll affect their employers. And the real danger is that businesses move out of New York and employees will have to follow them out of New York. Maybe they'll move to New Jersey, maybe they'll move to Florida. But that's the danger. And yeah, I think if he follows through with raising taxes, particularly raising taxes on businesses, then businesses will leave the state. Or at least leave the city. I don't know to what extent, if he shrinks the police and New York is overrun by crime because the police has shrunk, then people will leave the city, yes. So I do think people will start moving, both because businesses will move and because individuals will move if he actually follows through on what he says. And that's not a guarantee because he could renege on everything he says as well. Stephen, what do you think of cribbage? If you haven't played before, I recommend learning it. I like it more than poker. I haven't played it. I'm not going to learn it. The only 2 card games I ever enjoyed, a little bit of poker. I enjoyed somewhat. I can't play it too often. And the other one is bridge. I love bridge. Bridge is a great game. I'm not as good as some people who listen to this podcast who are world-class bridge players. But I played, and it's fun, and it's stimulating. It really is stimulating. Yeah, I love bridge. It's unlikely I'm going to learn a new card game. Let's see. We are still short on our second hour goal. We're almost at the end of the second hour. So it'd be nice to make a little bit more of a dent in it. Would be. Yeah. Couple of $20 questions that maybe more than a couple, 1, 2, anything. All right. Stephen, is it a bad thing to play cards for a hobby? Not sure of all the implications of Rand's letter to Spassky. No, I don't think so. And I don't think it's a bad thing to play chess for a hobby. She was complaining about Spassky's, that was his profession. That's all he did. And that he was in the Soviet Union and doing it there. But no, I don't think it's a bad thing at all to play cards as a hobby. It's fun. I think Ayn Rand played Scrabble for a hobby. I don't know if she played any card games, but I don't see why it would be wrong. Quite the opposite. It's fun. It's good. It's stimulating. It can be mind expanding. Like bridge is real. You need real effort. Michael, do Democrats only vote for explicitly socialist candidates when Trump is in power? No, I don't think that's true. I think they probably voted for them when Obama was in power. We just didn't pay attention. And look, they're voting socialist candidates out of power in California, and they're voting them into power in New York and Minneapolis. Of course, they haven't won yet, but they seem to be. But in California, they're voting them out of power. They've had them there enough, and they know how bad they are, and they're gone. Esoteric dichotomy. Hey, Yaron, I spent a weekend bouncing sci-fi ideas off my curated ChatGPT project. It's fun, and I'm constantly excited, amazed by tech progress. Yes, absolutely. ChatGPT and the whole AI is so exciting, and there's so many things to do with it, and I'm just playing at the edges, and it's super exciting, and there's so much more that could be done. Let's see. Stephen Harper says, I just saw that there is a 4-star hotel restaurant in Boston that is inspired by Ayn Rand's heroine, Dagny Taggart. It is the Dagny Hotel. Is it? How do you know that it's inspired by Dagny Taggart? Is that explicit on the website or something? Or it could be a different Dagny? How do we know it's inspired by Dagny Taggart? It is not appropriate for Ocon because it is just has small conference rooms. Okay. But do we know it's Dagny Taggart? Now I'm curious. Let me know, Stephen. Hunter, thank you. Have you read Quantum Physics is Nonsense, the recent article in Scientific American, interview with Nobel physicist? One quote, quantum mechanics is already too far from reason. No, I haven't read it. It's hard for me to read articles like that because I don't remember all the quantum physics that I used to know. I used to know some quantum physics. I don't remember the experiments and the math. I used to know that. And I never really understood it. I never understood the explanation. Never had an explanation. But I just don't know enough to be able to evaluate an article like that as good or not. But the fact that he's saying it's too far from reason is really good, particularly if he has a good understanding of what reason is. So I am curious. I have to ask Keith Lockridge next time he's on the show if he read that article and what he thinks. He'd be a good person to ask. Neil says, is Danielle Weiss an extremist? I don't know who Danielle Weiss is. Sorry. Should I Google her? Him? Her? I don't know. An Israeli far-right Orthodox Jew, sounds like it, founder of Nachalah, an Israeli settlement organization, a former mayor of Kedumim. She was first elected mayor of Kedumim in September 1986. I don't know. She very well could be. She looks like one. She's obviously super religious, which I would, extremism is not a great word, but I view unfavorably, put it that way, unfavorably. But I don't know much about her. All right. Thank you, guys. I appreciate all the super chat. We definitely made a dent in the goal. We did add 2 subscribers. If you have not subscribed yet, please subscribe to the Yaron Brook Show. If you're listening on a podcast, please come to YouTube and subscribe. If you're on Twitter right now listening, please come to YouTube and subscribe. That way you'll get notifications and everything else. Yeah, subscribe. We added 2 during the show. We now only need 36 new subscribers by the end of the month, or anytime, to make it to 40,000. Stephen Harper said, ChatGPT said it is inspired by Ayn Rand's character. I don't know if I trust ChatGPT. ChatGPT might be, what do you call it? Hallucinating that answer. So check it out. Where would ChatGPT get the answer to that? There would have to be a source online somewhere. See if you can find it. According to Ian, it's the wrong spelling. So I don't know. All right, guys, I will see you. Oh, tomorrow. Important announcement. Tomorrow, Monday, I will be interviewing George Selgin at 1 p.m. 1 p.m. East Coast time. George Selgin on the Great Depression. He's got a book out on the Great Depression. We're going to be talking about the Great Depression causes, and did FDR get us out of the Great Depression? What got us out of the Great Depression? What good things did FDR administration do, and what bad things did the FDR administration do? What was valuable, what was not valuable from a purely economic perspective? That should be really fun and really interesting. And then there'll be a news roundup in the evening, 7 p.m. So first George Selgin at 1 o'clock, and then news roundup, 7 p.m. See you tomorrow.